Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
That is picked off. How dangerous. Woods on the return. Cuts to the outside. And he's taken down with 2 seconds remaining.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house. Here's David Smoak and Paul Catalina.
Paul Catalina and I trading some text messages earlier today, and the story in the Texas Monthly, Richard Justice, NCAA Conference Realignment got you down? Blame Texas. Richard Justice joins us, Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports right now. And Richard, I looked at some of the comments, I went straight through the column and looked at the comments. I couldn't wait. I mean, I can't even imagine some of the responses you've gotten.
Yeah, well, my best one came from an Aggie buddy who sent me the Big 12 preseason football poll and said, look at this, with Baylor favored. Look at this. You're an underdog in this conference still, and you're going to be a big underdog in the next conference. Here was the point I wanted to make. Like, the greatest sports executive this country's ever had is Pete Rozelle. And the foresight Pete Rozelle had was, the New York Giants are only as strong as the Green Bay Packers. And that means we have to split the TV revenues. With the New York Giants, believe me, the New York Giants hated the idea that they had to give an equal share of their TV money, which they were one of the driving teams in Baltimore Colts, et cetera, to the Green Bay Packers, because a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. That set the tone for everything that has happened to the NFL. Let's go back to 2011. What if the Texas Longhorns? What if they had said, "Look, we need a strong conference. We need a strong Big 12 conference. We need to have a great Big 12 network." And also, the things that matter most in this state, and it got the Southwest Conference in trouble, obviously, because people cared a little bit too much in some ways. But we need Baylor, and we need TCU and SMU, and we need Texas Tech, and we need in a Big 12 television network would have been great. Would it have meant less money for Texas? Of course it would have. I mean, if you just want to judge it by money, the Longhorn Network, they couldn't turn down all that money. But that was where the trouble began, because Texas A&M lost trust in Texas, bolted for the SEC, and everything bad that has happened since then started from there, with Texas led Oklahoma into the SEC. What did that do? If you're the University of Texas, and you like to tell people, we have the most money, we have the most prestige, we have the most influence. I've told people in the SEC, I said, you think they're going to play nice with you guys? You got another thing coming. They think they're going to run your conference too. And, they laugh and roll their eyes. I said, okay, famous last words, watch. But what if they had tried to do the right thing? When you say you have more money, that money's not a factor. You can join any conference. You can be the best, the strongest independent this side of Notre Dame. All those things. Then why would you make a move for money? Why not make a move that's best for your student athletes? Look, an Austin to Waco bus trip, an Austin to College Station bus trip is a little bit better than flying to Iowa or flying to West Virginia or anything like that. And by the way, the fans care more about playing Baylor and Tech and A&M and TCU and SMU. I have an Aggie friend that lives close by here in the Woodlands, and he says, and I say, come on, admit it. It's not as much fun when you're not playing the schools that you have a tie to, that you have a deep-seated hatred or a rivalry with, however you want to call it. And he goes, well, that's true. He goes, I do have one Mississippi State guy on my block, but I have to go tell him when they're playing, so it doesn't mean quite as much. So that's the point I'm making.
Yeah, and I've heard, and again, you can't just base what people think on social media. My God, can you imagine where we'd be with that? But so you don't think there's the itch of wanting to play Alabama, Florida, et cetera, LSU, rather than playing Iowa State, Baylor, or Texas Tech?
Well, I think you are the flagship institution in the state of Texas, and what you do impacts everybody else. And what you did by going to the SEC, and what you did by basically, I don't want to say they kicked they kicked A&M in the shins. Maybe they didn't kick them in the butt to get them out, but I knew the A&M people. I've known the A&M people intimately, especially in the years 2010, 2011, 2012. They just didn't trust them at all. But if you're the flagship institution, isn't it incumbent upon you to, that Texas Tech and Baylor, Houston, they're depending on you, and they're going to be weakened significantly. Are you going to be helped by being in the SEC? Of course you're going to be helped by being in the SEC. But do you think a lawyer in Abilene, Texas, cares as much about playing Ole Miss if he's a Texas grad as he would about playing Texas Tech? Of course not. I mean, it's the sport has been weakened. Look at the geography. Look at a map of the United States now, and look at what the Pac-10 or Pac-12, whatever you call it, is proposing to be. All these schools over here and 2 schools over there. Look at what the Big 12 is. Let's say they poach Arizona, Utah, etc. Look, you're going from West Virginia to Iowa to Salt Lake City. Does that make any sense? Does that make any sense for your volleyball team? I mean, are you better off there? You're going to have more money, but money was not a factor for Texas.
Richard, forgive my maybe crass example here, but I do like your point about Texas saying they needed more money, or they need more prestige, they need a better TV deal, but they didn't look into why they're not having one. They're kind of the people who farted in the elevator and then wondered why it stinks.
Yeah. I often thought of that. Like, you should have made peace with Texas A&M. You're stronger together than you are apart. And look, it's the best thing that ever happened to Texas A&M. All of a sudden, they were not in the shadow of the University of Texas. They were not the little brother anymore. They were in the greatest conference ever devised. They are now the industry gold standard in terms of finances, success, money. They've hired great coaches, and they're at a point where they're just about to be a national contender across the board in almost every sport. They ain't going back, And I thought of this, like, if you had Jeff Bezos' money, is there any price you could pay to put together a conference? You could put together a conference with the Texas schools, with Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Arkansas, Nebraska, and you pour money on them. As you thought about it, like, I'm sure Bezos' money could be spent better elsewhere. But would it be doable, and would it be better for fans and the student athletes in the state of Texas? No question about it.
So what is, what you mentioned, one thing that when all that went down, Richard, as you remember with Texas and Oklahoma and the SEC, and kind of the dust settling, of course, there were thoughts and meetings in Austin or whatever, maybe most of it all political, but there was a quote, and I believe it was from a UT administrator when somebody wrote the story about, well, what about everybody else? And it was basically, and it was probably as Texas as you can get, and they get hammered for things sometimes too, was we really don't care. Do you believe that?
Well, I mean, actions speak louder than words, right? Mm-hmm. And again, it goes back to 2011. Like, you had to make peace with Texas A&M. You had to make peace. You're not better off with Texas A&M playing elsewhere. And everything that's happened has flowed from there. Hey, look, I don't want to sound like the old guy yelling at people to get off my yard, but it's not better off. It's not better off. I mean, when I was working in Dallas and Houston, like, and you guys know this, you would be as fired up for a Texas A&M game, and I've been to a couple of them as fans, as you would be for Texas, Oklahoma. I mean, some of the greatest thrills of my professional life have been the Texas Baylor games in '74 and '78. I mean, those meant, and the thing is, those meant something to the fans. Now, that's not always a good thing, because sometimes our ambition to be great and our judgment got messed up, and that ended up with the death of the Southwest Conference, was a huge factor. But there has to be a better way than it is right now. What if the NCAA had power? What if the NCAA governed the TV contracts and didn't just let everybody go in 1,000 different directions? Again, the NFL is the model. I used to talk to Bud Selig when he was commissioner of baseball, hours upon hours, and he said, what we have to do is we have to do what the NFL did. What the NFL did is a model for everybody else in that you have to give every team a chance to survive. And that means Baylor's not going to have as much revenue as Texas. Now Baylor's flourishing now because they have a great athletics director, and obviously he hired a great football coach, and the basketball coach is pretty good too. And Baylor's a giant now, but it's not a fair game. And if it is about the best thing for the fans and the best thing for the student athletes, there should be a better way. Hey, look, I understand I'm tilting and winning. It's never going to happen. It is what it is. The Big 12 is going to struggle for survival, and Texas is going to finish fourth in the SEC. Whatever division they're in, I don't know. Anyway, sorry.
I've used this example many times. The NFL, about all 32 teams get equal share, even though we know the Cowboys have the most valuable franchise, and then the Giants and whoever else. And the SEC is always, even if there's some hated rivalries, even if at times they're like, damn, what Vanderbilt means as much to what they do, or Mississippi State, as you mentioned, as Alabama, Georgia, and Florida.
That's right.
And if they can do it, why can't everybody else?
There was a ranking baseball executive a few years ago that told me, he said, we have owners here who believe that the best thing for the sport is for the New York Yankees to win the World Series every year, or to win the World Series every year. And I said, you mean contend? I agree with that. They lift the water for everybody. He went, no, not contend. Win every year. If that's the best thing for the Cincinnati Reds would be for the New York Yankees to win every year. There are owners, I don't know if the Reds owner feels that way, but there are owners who feel that way. And you understand it. You understand what it means, because what's the best thing Vanderbilt has going for it? Plays in a conference with Alabama and Georgia and LSU and these powerhouses. But it's not equal. I mean, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, they would not be in the same spot if they didn't have that association with the SEC. And the Big 12, I mean, what you hear from TV people is, I talk about, let's just do a conference of Texas schools. And because UTSA aspires to be Division I, whatever. And they say there's not enough eyes. But if you took that model and you added Oklahoma to it, you added Arkansas to it, I guarantee you, I can't believe Nebraska wouldn't at least listen. But if you had Texas, you had Oklahoma, and you had Texas, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M, that's three foundational schools. And what's happened since Art Briles went to Baylor is like it changed the recruiting dynamic. Baylor became a cool place for kids to go to school. It changed all the recruiting numbers. And then Gary Patterson made TCU cool and all that. And now SMU, I think, is on the rise. But you have to have the foundation programs to begin with, just for TV. And those three probably would be a pretty good place to start.
Richard, it's always baffled me why college football leaders don't apply any of the logic that they do for the college basketball tournament. You can't apply that logic to college football. What's successful in the professional leagues, like you mentioned, with equitable revenue across the board, you can't apply that logic either. That they seem determined to create something different in spite of what their fans and the world tells them will work. And that's probably why nothing will ever change.
That's right. And it's just, you need a visionary. You need a Roselle. You need a Mark Cuban who's had the ability to look around corners. In his own way, Jerry Jones has certainly been that in finding hidden revenue sources that other teams didn't even know was there. But you need a strong, visionary leader, a leader with the ability to sell it. And instead, what did we have in the Southwest Conference? We had Texas running the show. You remember there used to be these stories about Frank Royals and Darrell Royal setting the rules for everyone else in the conference. You needed a stronger commissioner than that. And also, I think it's been, and if you're the commissioner of the Big 12, you're almost in a defensive crouch from day one, in that I have to keep Texas and Oklahoma happy, or they're gonna leave us, and then we're gonna be left wandering in the desert and all of that. Yeah, and now it's too late. What if the NCAA had taken charge of all the TV contracts and all that? Instead, what you have is this patchwork. The SEC network is a money machine. The Big Ten network is a money machine. The Pac-12, not so much. Maybe that's partly time zone, but it's too late now because the NCAA basically doesn't exist. The SEC is going to do what it wants to do. You guys have heard the slang now is that there's going to be two super conferences, one ESPN and one Fox, and everybody else is going to be scrambling for survival. But it's not right. It's not right. It's not right for the kids, and it's not right for the fans.
Yeah, and they are overlooked, and by some that just don't care, and not just UT. They get beat up a lot with this, but at the same time, you'd mentioned the start of conference realignment back when UT had the Longhorn network. But wasn't the pin that was taken out of the grenade? Wasn't the one that launched everything that when the Longhorn Network announced they were going to televise high school football in Texas, and that was evaporated very quickly. But was that the one that really kind of was the linchpin in the grenade?
I just know I know pretty much what Texas A&M was thinking, and they were thinking we can't do this. And you'll hear well, you were invited to come in. No. This was going to be a Texas operation, just like Texas perceived the Big 12 to be a Texas operation, and it wasn't going to be. If you're Texas A&M and you say we take a back seat to no one, we're not looking for our little piece of the pie. We take a back seat to no one. We're as good as Alabama. I don't know what the gold standard program was in 2011. Maybe it was Alabama back then, but you had to do something radical, and believe me, they are in hog heaven in College Station. They are flourishing, and but they did what was best for them at a time when they felt like they couldn't trust Texas. And so what happens? Everybody else gets left in a scramble mode. Look, the Big 12. I don't like the Big 12 with Cincinnati and BYU. I don't like that. And I love what Cincinnati has done for its program. I want our schools to play our schools, but that ship has sailed. I'm just an old man howling at the moon.
I'm an old man too, Richard. One more thing, and we appreciate your time. You have, when it's been necessary, hammered Baylor, and you have also recently, back in December, you wrote the article about Dave Aranda being an incredibly unique head coach and also a damn good one, and you've done stories about Baylor men's basketball and what they've accomplished. And then you just mentioned Mack Rhoades. Considering what they have been through on and off, pretty amazing what they are doing right now?
There's no administrator in college sports better than Mack Rhoades. And I say that with a bias because when I send an email to his assistant, I always drop in there. And I just want to thank Mack because without him and the rules he put in place for student athletes at the University of Houston, my youngest daughter would never graduate from college. And she takes it in there and goes, "What is this?" He goes, and I mean that. No, there is no. He has such. I mean, look, hiring Dave Aranda was not. It was not a slam dunk in that he's different, as you guys know. I mean, I don't know him really, but he's a different sort of guy. Except he's brilliant. Except when you do the homework of what he was in high school, what he was in college, the guy is brilliant. I mean, you can't make a better hire. And obviously, Scott Drew is he is one of the best ever.
Richard, thank you, man. We appreciate it when you jump on with us. Appreciate the time. Again, the article is in the Texas Monthly. You go to texasmonthly.com. NCAA Conference Realignment got you down, ? Blame Texas. And he's given us a lot of the reasons for the article and what's in it as well, the column. Thank you, sir. Richard Justice, texasmonthly.com. He's blasted them now. And yet again, with what they've done.